It is arguably the best football weekend of the year. It is the divisional round. We have got 4 games, which are going to be hopefully pretty fun. We're going to break them down from a DFS perspective, letting you know our top picks across the various FanDuel slates for this weekend. Welcome on into the Heat Check, a FanDuel Research podcast. My name is JimSannes. I am a managing editor for FanDuel Research, joined here as I am every Thursday by Brandon Gdula. He is a senior managing editor for FanDuel Research. You can find Brandon on X at Gdula13. He's on Blue Sky at Gdula. Brandon, we are on to the divisional round. We get the Lions and the Chiefs back in our lives. We get the capper of Ravens versus Bills. I'm pretty pumped about this weekend. How you doing today?
Yeah, it should be a good week of football, even though we don't have as many games we had last week. And last week was fine football-wise, but kind of have some high hopes. We're going to talk about every game individually. There's one game in particular that's kind of iffy in terms of how many like offensive fireworks or how much. I guess
I think we're talking about different games when I nod my head to you saying this. I nod my head, but I think we're thinking of different games. But yes.
Oh, yeah. I think based on our... Well, yeah, there's probably going to be... one game has Puka Nacua, and he's the best receiver in football. So
Nico Collins is better, but that's okay.
Well, it's close, but I got high hopes. We got Bills Ravens, which should be... There's no way that can be a letdown because, like, even if it's sort of a decisive win, you learn a lot about one of these teams. I'm not going to put it all on like Lamar and Josh Allen necessarily and say like learn a lot about these individual players, but it's been kind of a great year for both of them, getting sort of maximizing everything that they have. And even if it's kind of lopsided, it's like, oh, cool. This is like a big statement. So I'm excited for all 4 games for different reasons, but excited a little bit more for certain games for DFS for sure.
The late game both days could rock, and I'm excited for that. We'll talk about our disagreements on a couple of these games later on. We're going to go game by game, break down our thoughts on each game, and we'll primarily be talking through the lens of the 2-game slates, the Saturday and the Sunday only slates. We'll mix in some thoughts in the 4-game slate too. That's where the most of the money is on FanDuel, is on the 2-game slates. So that's where the majority of our focus will be. If you want to skip around, if you listen to this on Sunday or Saturday night, hopefully you enjoyed the 70-point outburst from the Commanders and the Lions. I'll put the timestamp for when the Sunday only discussion begins in the episode description. I'll put that up on YouTube after the fact too. So if you want to skip around for the Saturday versus Sunday only slates, feel free to do so over there. We'll dive in and get you set for all these games in just 1 second. But first, a reminder to make sure you're subscribed to the FanDuel Research Podcast feed wherever you get your podcast, because the PGA Podcast is back every Tuesday, breaking down our best bets and DFS plays for that week's PGA Tour event, going through course history, going through recent form, everything you need to know to fill out good lineups, hopefully make some quality bets as well. Every Tuesday, just on the podcast feed, goes up Tuesday afternoon. So search for FanDuel Research Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We'll also be with you next Thursday for the conference championships and the Thursday before Super Bowl 59 to get you ready for that in the same place, 10 a.m. Eastern on the YouTube page. But FanDuel Research Podcast, if you like what you hear, it is a 5-star rating and review as well. Of course, the YouTube page is where you can also find our betting shows, talk through the national championship with Ed Feng last night. We'll also be talking to Megan Payton later on today, get her best bets for the divisional round. And Annie Nader joins me tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern, to talk player props for the divisional round as well, all on the YouTube page. Subscribe there, turn on notifications, and leave us a thumbs up. We appreciate everybody who has done so already. From the first whistle, not final whistle, to the final drive. That's why I said final. There we go. From the first whistle to the final drive. Nailed it first time. FanDuel takes the NFL playoffs to the next level, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's $300 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same game parlays, and so much more. Plus, When you win, you'll get paid instantly and get started with $300 in bonus bets. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. For Kansas, an affiliation with the Kansas Star Casino, or 18 plus and present in DC. First online real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut. Visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. Let's begin things here by breaking down the Saturday-only slate and start things off by talking about the Texans and the Chiefs. Right now, FanDuel Sportsbook, Chiefs favored by 8.5, and the total in this game is just down at 41.5. Key things to know for this game: wind speed's currently 12 miles per hour, so that is going to impact partly why the total is lower for this game. Also, because the Texans are involved, that may play a role too. As far as injuries go, everybody on the Chiefs is healthy, and I mean everybody. So that bye was good to them. Week 18, effective bye, good to them too. Joe Mixon on the Texans was not on the injury report Tuesday, but was added Wednesday, being limited with an ankle injury. Midweek downgrades, very scary. That is worth noting for sure. Dalton Schultz limited with a shoulder injury on both days, and then Robert Woods didn't practice due to a hip injury for the Texans. So, Brandon, let's get your top-down view of this game. Texans at Chiefs. What's your view of this one in terms of expectations?
I don't like it, and I'm sure you're going to try to talk me into it. So that's my expectation here. I don't like it, not based on the talent. Well, kind of for the Texans, just their health more than their talent. I think they're a talented offense overall, skill player-wise, I'll say. But they're just dealing with key injuries and can't really give CJ Stroud a lot to work with. They're also playing outdoors in the wind, which is not good historically for CJ Stroud. I mean, that's, you take virtually every quarterback who plays a majority of his games indoors, takes them outside, like the numbers drop. It's understandable, but it's really not great for Stroud. And I respect this Chiefs team a lot. They just walked their way to a historic season. I know they won a ton of close games.
Yeah.
Their record could have been much worse, but it was never going to be dreadful. They weren't going to be like a wild card team. And I'm not convinced that they've been pushed very often, despite all those close games. Again, they've been close, but I don't necessarily think it was because they're a little bit fraudulent. I think they just haven't shown us everything.
They play with their feet a lot.
When I talk to my wife, Sierra, about football sometimes, she's like, anybody but the Chiefs this year, because she just got Chiefs fatigue. And I'm like, I understand it, but for me, I love to see that greatness in sports.
Yeah.
Whenever you have that, these are the best of the best, not just the playoff teams, but all the teams even that struggle. These are the best players, the best, I know people will probably laugh, but the best coaches that we have. And the fact that certain teams and coaches just transcend, that's what I love about sports. And I kind of I don't see Houston being really competitive here. I don't see them moving the ball a lot. They had a nice game last week, but it was all defense and special teams. I just kind of feel like the Chiefs put the clamps down. And with the Chiefs, whenever they're operating the way that they kind of want to, they don't want to give Travis Kelce a 35% target share if they don't have to. And I'm not convinced that they need to. So I think they're going to play from ahead. You might disagree. Maybe that's what you're okay. Just trying to read the tea leaves from your reaction there. But I don't think that they want to give anybody heavy work. That includes the running backs. That includes the pass catchers. So I know the total's low. It's not that outrageous to say, oh, this is my least favorite game of the week. I just don't know how it plays. What are the circumstances that this sort of plays to a shootout? It's that the Chiefs get ahead and Stroud has to just sling it to Nico. That's kind of the only path.
Right. I think that's fair. I'm also not super high in the Texans offense here. My enthusiasm for this game revolves almost entirely around the Chiefs offense. And it's partly the playoff pat narrative where Mahomes reaches a new level in the playoffs. And it's not like anecdotal nonsense. Like if you look at his EPA per play in the playoffs versus regular season, it does go up and he runs more. So like he always does this like late down nonsense where he'll have like a 3rd and 15 scramble where he like does his weird pitter patter thing for 16 yards and then goes out of bounds. He does that, but like he does it more during the playoffs. Like he averages 29.1 rushing yards per game in the playoffs. So that boosts him for DFS. His salary is low at 77 and so it's partly the playoff narrative for the Chiefs, but also they got a lot more efficient as they got NFL caliber receiver play throughout the season. If you look at them from weeks 8 to 17, they were at 0.15 adjusted net expected points per play, which is Number Fire's EPA metric, league average 0.09. So well above average there. In the 2 games with Marquise Brown, which meant their 3 receiver set was Hollywood Brown, Xavier Worthy, DeAndre Hopkins, mixed in there with Justin Watson and Juju Smith-Schuster, they were at 0.25. So like that was really good play. 2-game sample. So it could be total nonsense, but like when you watched that, it looked good. And so to me, that says, okay, we're getting Mahomes, $7,700 on FanDuel, Travis Kelce, 65, Marquise Brown is 6,000, Xavier Worthy, 64. I don't know how to read the running back room. That part's, I've got no freaking idea there. But like we're getting a lot of these superstars at a discount. So what I can do is buy into the Chiefs and then just load up on the guys I want in Commanders Lions later on. You know, maybe I don't use Mahomes, but I can go to Marquise Brown. I can go to Kelce and feel good about those guys because I expect this offense to be efficient. And I think that's the key driver for me is having faith in the Chiefs offense, reaching a new level now that they have, again, non-scrubs at receiver and Mahomes when he reaches a new level.
I love that I was trying to put over like every NFL player is like really talented and you just call the Chiefs.
I will do the same thing. There are exceptions that need to be made when the truth comes out.
So I respect your model. I respect your read on defenses. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm overrating the Houston defense. How do you anticipate? Like, I know it's Mahomes and we kind of just say matchup doesn't matter, but how much of Houston's defense is factoring in here? Do you think they're a little overrated? Or is it more like, I just think the Chiefs are going to steamroll any defense at this rate because they haven't really shown anything. And they've kind of backed their way, as you were like kind of alluding to, kind of backed their way into like a great record. And then they're kind of a new team. Like there's not a whole lot on tape with like Hollywood Brown and stuff. So I could like, I'm not, my dislike for this game is not really about the Chiefs or the salaries. It's that I don't know that they're going to need to give anyone a massive target share, which they don't do already. So what are your thoughts on Houston's defense?
Yeah, I think it's a good defense. I think that there are a lot of good individual players in impact position. Derek Stingley Jr. is a star. They've got really good pass rushers, but the Chiefs offensive line did play a lot better ever since they moved Joe Thuney to left tackle. And I think that was encouraging to me. And now they've had 3 weeks to kind of get those guys to gel with the new, and like, again, they played pretty well with Thuney at left tackle in general. So I think that's encouraging. And also I would push back a bit on like they don't want to give anyone a big target share. Cause like they kind of have, if you look weeks 8 to 17. So with Hopkins on the team, Kelce had a 26% target share, 28% inside the red zone. In the 2 games with Marquise Brown, he was at 23% with a 31% red zone share. And Xavier Worthy in those games, 25% overall, 25% deep, 38% in the red zone. Hollywood Brown, 19% overall, 38% deep. So like, I kind of know where the ball is going. I'm not drawn towards Hopkins, despite the fact it is a revenge game. But like, I can feel solid about Worthy, Kelce, and Brown at salary, given that I do think they will get respectable usage in this game.
So, okay. So this is one of those situations where we agree. We're just framing it slightly differently. I think at salary, they're really solid plays.
Okay.
Just not stellar, can't miss, super obvious plays.
Right.
That's basically where you are as well. Yeah. So again, kind of just had to talk through it. And, you know, there are some ways to bring it back. of course, you can't really rule out Nico Collins from having a big game, but
No.
it does help to have a little bit with John Mechie. But let's talk about this. I mean, actually, let's rank the Chiefs pass catchers. I think that's going to be important. As you're staring at a blank lineup here. Who do you want to get to first? And are you okay? It's a 2-game slate, so we got to talk a little game theory, roster construction. Are you okay with multiple Chiefs pass catchers in a non-Mahomes lineup?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, me too.
In part because like I think that you can feel okay about De'Ami Brown and Olamide Zaccheaus, but like in terms of like lower salary, and JMO it's at 67, but like in terms of like lower salary guys, I feel better about Worthy and Brown than I do about most guys, and I feel better about Mechie honestly than Zaccheaus and Brown. No, that's stupid. Retract that. We'll take that out in post. No, we won't. Just kidding. But like, I do feel good about those guys. I think one thing that influences my rankings is that Sam Laporta is phenomenal, a phenomenal tight end play. So I can't rank Kelsey highest just because he's competing with Laporta. So honestly, I might go Hollywood 1. It's Hollywood or Worthy. Worthy's role was good down the stretch.
Yeah,
like he got a lot of red zone work too.
Yeah, if you kind of look at the games with Hollywood Brown and with Mahomes, I talk about money targets. Like Worthy's been involved in the red zone. I love to see virtually double-digit targets, sort of for him. As Jim's pulling up the game log for anybody not watching, but 38% red zone share, 42% of the money targets. So when he was inside the 10 or in the end zone, he can get carries. So I think it's Worthy pretty clearly number 1.
Okay. Okay. I'll subscribe to that too. That you talked me into it. Yeah.
So, and look, I think it's kind of a 3 guys, don't have to complicate it from there. 3 guys, honestly, is more Chiefs than we've considered. It's a function of it's a 2-game slate. I don't know that these guys, I wouldn't write them off necessarily on like the full 4-game slate. But if this were a traditional 13-game main slate, I'd be like, in this matchup, can probably do better, but that's not what we have available to us. So I'm going to go Worthy number 1. Okay. And then Kelsey and then Brown, I think, just because tight ends iffy always. I don't care how many names there are. They're still an iffy position. Yeah. And Brown, for as much as I like him, I still don't know how much, like, hopefully he's scaled up full. Yeah. I think there's a lot of potential for that. His target per route rate numbers are absurd.
Right. Because they kept his stats pretty low those 2 games, but it expanded in the second game. Yeah. And I feel like it could expand more now that he's further removed from that shoulder injury. So that's kind of part of why I think he's at least in Worthy's tier to me.
Yeah, I don't want to make it sound like he's a clear afterthought, but I just think he's third. Worthy's been involved all year. I guess we should probably dance around to like some rematch game. Does that matter to you at all?
No, because like Tank played in that game for the Texans.
Yeah, me too.
Hollywood did play there for the Chiefs, but like again, limited snaps, stuff like that. So I think like honestly, the rematch angle is part of why I feel okay about like the Texans showing life here, is because they were able to handle this Chiefs defense. I know Watson, their secondary, is not back yet, so like there were some injuries to the Chiefs that were not in play. I think Chris Jones might have missed that game too. I can't remember which game he missed, but there were some injuries in the Chiefs defense that may have influenced that. But I don't care a ton just because each team is pretty different now, weirdly, than they were less than a month ago.
Yeah. So I think we're on the same page with the Chiefs receivers. Let's move into the Chiefs running backs. It's a big timeshare, that's for sure.
It is. It has been. And it's kind of like you have to ask yourself, what are the odds that Pacheco goes back into his old role? Because he had the leg injury, and then he sat out week 18. He sat out the bye week last week. Do they put Pacheco back into his previous role? Because from a talent perspective, he's clearly their best back. And if you look at him before the injury, he had 17 carries and 4 targets per game, 94.5 yards in scrimmage per game with a 44% red zone share. Do I think he'll get that? No. Like baseline expectations, probably closer to what he's been, which is 40 yards per game in the game since he came back. But like, what are the odds we get Pacheco back into a more full-time role? And that's kind of the exposure that I want to him is the answer to that question. And I think that's probably about 30%, like 30% odds we get him back into a full role, or at least closer to a full role. So I think 30% is the odds I prescribe to that. Is that being overly optimistic?
No, I mean, what's notable for Pacheco is that while the overall snap rates tend to sort of be close or even favor Kareem Hunt, he has been more involved in the first half than Kareem Hunt in these games since returning. Not every single game necessarily. Some games have been close. Some games have leaned Hunt, but 46% first half snap rate in week 17, for example, 58% in week 15. I'm with you where there's potential for Pacheco to kind of scale up.
Yeah.
And the reality, though, is also kind of did this last week, and we had to talk about Lamar. We have a very low salaried running back option for the nightcap. That's going to factor in a little bit to how much salary do we need to save at running back, as David Montgomery is salaried at $4,000 this week. So we'll have to discuss sort of that as part of the Pacheco and Kareem Hunt angle, because on a 2-game slate, I'm not locked in to playing 3 running backs. I always like to when I can. Don't necessarily have to on this slate.
I agree.
So I think Pacheco kind of fits more of a, I'm going to play Pacheco and maybe one pass catcher from the Chiefs or not, and just say, look, this one's like 17-14. Pacheco scores, Justin Watson scores, or something like that. And Pacheco's kind of the best play because this game's like low scoring and teams are trying to bleed the clock or something. I do prefer him easily to Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt does feel like the. What's that?
I'm not using Kareem Hunt at all. I know it's a 2-game slate, but if you look at him in the games with Pacheco back, 38 yards per game, and that will not get better. I don't think there's any shot his role improves.
40 yards and a touchdown, though, on a 2-game slate could be enough.
If
he's the one who scores. I'm just saying.
When I've got Xavier Worthy, Marquise Brown. I mean, I was just downplaying De'Ami Brown and Olamide Zaccheaus, but like given the total in their game, I prefer those guys. Like comparing to other players in this range, I don't think he's in anywhere near them. I know that you're right about like he could be in the optimal, but if it burns me, it burns me. I don't care.
Yeah, I don't think like the real yardage upside is there to burn us. It's more if this is a low scoring game and maybe Washington, Detroit's a little bit lower scoring than we think, that could be enough. Just pointing it out. I much prefer Pacheco. And even then, running back's okay on the 2-game slate, specifically if you include Montgomery, but not clamoring to play Pacheco. But I do kind of hope that role scales up in the playoffs, because there's been little glimpses of it. And he's really fun to watch.
He is. And I would say you can use Pacheco with Montgomery, and then you're talking just stars. Like I always wind up being underweight at Amon-Ra St. Brown, and I hate myself for it. I don't have to do that this week if I use both Pacheco and Montgomery together. So I think that's a route to.
You do not hate yourself for it. You love not playing Amon-Ra St. Brown. Don't lie.
I publicly hate myself for it. Privately, I don't care. But publicly, yeah. So much FOMO. But on a 2-game slate, that FOMO is actually real for him because he has an insane red zone role and is a very good football player. Full slate, I don't care. But I think that's a way to get me more Nico, a way to get me more Amon-Ra, stuff like that. And I think that's appealing to me, is using the two of them, Pacheco and Montgomery, together.
Yeah, I agree. So Pacheco, interesting. Let's talk Mahomes. We kind of
glossed do you want to talk Mixon first?
We were kind of doing all Chiefs right now, but
all right, fair enough.
We can talk. I don't care. You're the host. I was just trying to get us on track.
Mixon limited in practice Wednesday with an ankle injury. It didn't see anything to say that it was concerning, but it is concerning, I guess I would say. Looked pretty good in the win over the Chargers, like from a watch the game perspective. And in the full games for Mixon this year, he's at 105.1 yards and scrimmage per game. That's actually the most for any running back in their most relevant sample. It's still like hard to be enthusiastic just because it's a weird setup for them. They're going to be they're massive dogs. They deserve to be pretty heavy underdogs in this game. So Mixon at salary or Pacheco at salary?
I
know it's
Mixon.
tough, right?
It's got to be Mixon due to the likelihood that he handles 20 plus carries. And I don't know how many guys are going to get 20 carries on this slate, especially with Montgomery back. I don't know what that workload is going to look like for Gibbs. So there's no such thing as safety, especially on a team with some like offensive concerns like this. But I don't want to downplay Joe Mixon's. Like, he's still got a 54% red zone opportunity share in games since returning, like, that are relevant for him. The odds that Mixon gets 2 touchdowns, I don't know haven't looked at any like props, but they got to be second behind Gibbs.
He is currently 11-1 to score twice, even with Pacheco to do so.
Even with Pacheco?
Yeah, Pacheco's also 11-1. Pacheco's props were actually pretty optimistic on him. I guess 50.5 rushing plus receiving. He actually does. I don't know. Interesting. I think I'm writing about this game later. Am I? No, I have different ones. Okay. Yeah, it's Mixon 79.5 rushing plus receiving. Pacheco 50.5. I would take the under on Hunt. I should probably do that now. But like, yeah, it's just so hard to be enthusiastic with like expectations here. Now he's maybe banged up. If Mixon does not go, I would expect a timeshare between Dameon Pierce and Daria Gumbawale. Credit to Pierce, because like in week 18, when they gave him a shot, he was a beast. He had that huge touchdown run against the Titans. I think he's a good, decent football player who knows his role, accepts his role, stuff like that. But Gumbawale will be in there if they fall behind, and they probably will fall behind at some point in this game. So I think it'd be a split. I would go Pierce a bit, but like much, much, much prefer Montgomery. And it's hard to even like view Pierce like a pivot just because like, I don't know. It's weird setup.
Yeah, their implied team total was 7.8 points worse than the 2-game slate average on Saturday.
Yeah.
It's at 16.5. I dusted off my model for this one, and it did not care for Houston very much at all. So I guess maybe I should be okay downplaying Mixon. I just feel like if he's full by Friday, they're gonna have to ride him. Yeah. And I'm not guaranteed that workload from any other back on this slate.
Okay. Mixon or Gibbs with Monty back?
Oh, Jahmyr Gibbs on the team that's supposed to score twice as many points. But
yeah, I agree. I just wanted to check to make sure we weren't.
No, the thing for me is it's really easy to kind of gloss over backs in like the 7K range on small slates because you don't think of them as slate busters.
Yeah.
But we don't talk for various reasons. But if he were full and he were 76, I think I'd be much more optimistic here. Yeah. But also, if he gets 18 points, on a full slate, that's not amazing. But on a 2-game slate, that matters. And so I tend to overlook these guys. So Mixon, I don't want to write off, but he's not my favorite Texan this week.
Okay.
And I don't know that he's yours either.
So let's talk about Mahomes first, because you wanted to go that way. Let's talk quarterback overall. On the 2-game slate, do you see yourself using Stroud at all? Because I don't.
No, okay. I don't know. I wasn't there last week. I understand the case. These are 2 of the most like physically gifted quarterbacks in the NFL. Talented. I understand like this could in a perfect world, if everything goes right, they could just have an epic showdown. I don't really expect that we're going to get that. I don't want to play CJ Stroud. I have 2.5 other quarterbacks I want to play on this slate, so I'm good to.
Is Mahomes the half?
Mahomes is a half. I just don't know that he's going to have to do a lot.
I put him at QB3 as well. And like, let's say you give me 10 lineups for the 2-game slate.
4-4-2.
He's in 1 or 2 of those.
5-3-2 maybe. 5 Daniels. Oh, well, I don't know. I like Goff a lot,
Yeah.
but
So that's why Mahomes is 1 or 2 for me out of 10.
oh,
Probably.
I thought you switched. Yeah.
No.
1 or 2.
Well, he's
No,
in 1 or 2 out of 10 lineups.
yeah, I was saying like 5 Daniels or Goff. I got to kind of make up that decision. 3 of the other, and then 2 Mahomes probably. He's got multiple
5.
pass catchers, so
Yeah.
that's always fun.
Yeah. And he does run, which is nice. So I do like that. And again, his salary's low at 77, which does help too. So intrigued for sure. But limitations. Let's talk other Texans. Specifically the pass catchers. It's basically Nico Collins 85, Dalton Schultz 53, and John Mechie 55. Nico is fantastic. If you look back to last week in their wild card game, 31 routes run, 8 targets, 3 deep targets, and that one for Nico. He was, I think, pretty good against the Chiefs. No, he went 10 targets, 60 yards in that one. So didn't do a whole lot there. But then there's also John Mechie at 55. Mechie can be a salary saver for us. Also had 8 targets last week, despite losing a fumble immediately. I had the Texans money line, and he made me real nervous. But 8 targets, no Deontay Johnson. He was released earlier this week. I think both Nico and Mechie are like solid plays, despite my lack of enthusiasm for the Texans offense overall. Are you feeling kind of the same way about those two guys?
Yeah, Mechie has kind of, to me, done enough to sort of stabilize a role. This team is really hard to look at in terms of a relevant sample, just because they had Diggs for a bit, they had Tank Dell for a bit, they didn't have Nico for a bit. If you kind of look at like a 2-game sample with Nico, no Dell, which is a recent injury happened in that Chiefs game, no Diggs, like Mechie's at a 25% target share. They kind of spread things out in the red zone, which I don't love. They give it to Mixon and then kind of spread things out. But he can get some downfield work. I just think that at 55, it's enough to get there, even on a team that has a low implied team total. And yeah, whenever we're talking iffy samples, why not just look at last week, right?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
in the playoffs, and great target per route rate. It was a huge, well, I don't know if it was a vote of confidence for Mechie after his fumble.
It was a vote of no confidence in Deontay Johnson.
So there's still something there. I do think like the probability that he falls under 50 yards, I don't know what I need to pull up the props. When we're talking
50
small
yards
slates
this year, he hasn't had 50 yards. He's had 50 yards once. So,
but like, I do think that the ceiling is quite low. Touchdown regression candidate just from not really scoring. I don't know. This is a great week for the Texans to score touchdowns, but he is a concession to get to higher ceiling plays this week.
FanDuel won't even list 70 plus for Mechie. He's plus 210 to get 50 plus. So about 31% somewhere in there. So he's 55 for a reason, but like we need salary savers at some point. So I think that makes sense. And
his prop is 33.5. He didn't even tell me that info. That's kind of brutal.
I mean, plus 210 to get 50 plus yards is also pretty brutal. It was kind of,
I know, but like, I think it's just easier to comprehend like what's it sort of set at. But nobody, the reason I love this game though is like only Nico at 82.5 is above 51.5. Worthy and Kelsey are both 51.5. Like, I just think this team, like, we're gonna get like no offense to Noah Gray, but like we're gonna get like Noah Gray target, and we're gonna be like, why aren't we just giving these to Kelsey? What are we doing?
Oh, okay, yeah, I don't think that's gonna happen, but I don't want any Dalton Schultz. Given I adore Laporta, I think Kelsey's a good play, so no Schultz for me. So honestly, in this game, it's pretty narrow in a good way. I mean that in a positive sense. That's part of why I like it. Is I think it's narrow. So I think that's a positive. Any final thoughts for you on this game?
No, I think we covered it.
Let's move then to the highlight of the Saturday slate. That is the Commanders at the Lions. Right now, FanDuel Sportsbook, Lions favored by 9.5, pretty light, 9.5 minus 104. And the total of this game, 55.5, the second highest total since the start of last year. The highest total, of course, was the Lions Vikings in week 17. And we know, or week 18, we know what happened in that one. Weather, hopefully nothing. It's inside. Injuries, David Montgomery, full in practice on Wednesday, full in practice Thursday too. And he honestly made it sound like he could have played in the divisional round or the wild card round 2 had they played. So I feel like he's like full green light right now, which is encouraging. Guard Kevin Zeitler didn't practice Wednesday with a hamstring injury. So that's the only downgrade for the Lions right now is potentially no Zeitler, very good guard for them, but their offensive line is still phenomenal. Brandon, massive total in this game, large spread, but I think we've seen enough out of the Commanders all year long to say they're not going to fold in this spot. So how do you feel about this game from a top-down perspective?
Yeah, you can't really like just look at Jaden Daniels and say, rookie on the road, anything like that. So I'm trying to think of ways to talk myself down on this game a little bit, and I'm having trouble doing it.
Yeah.
Mostly due to the fact that both of these offenses are great.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you about like the Lions defense and how you kind of value them. I think that's kind of important, but Jaden just looks like he's it, right?
Yeah.
Like I kind of said that about like CJ Stroud last year. So things can change. Things can kind of collapse,
he did perk up in the playoffs too when he had to. So like, I think that Stroud point still holds.
So like, if I put on my subjective cap, I just don't see this one being like too much of a letdown.
Yeah.
We got Detroit on a mission, which I absolutely love.
Yeah.
We've got the De'Ami Brown's playing in this one, so Amon-Ra St. Brown's going to be hyped up. One of the 16 receivers drafted before Amon-Ra, and he has a list, which is sick. Next week, we also could get Devontae Smith or Tutu Atwell, just like got Thanos snapped. But there's a lot.
I forgot Tutu was a second-round pick.
Yeah. We also have like Bateman and Nico lingering. There could be potential.
Yeah.
I don't think the Texans will make it, but like,
never know.
I don't know. I have nothing bad to say about the Lions yet again this week. So that's where I want to get to.
Yeah. And I kind of agree with your overall thoughts in this game where there aren't a lot of like paths to failure. I think that like in terms of the total, it could go under because like there's a lot of fourth down variance in this game because both these teams are psychopaths where they go for it on fourth down all the time and it doesn't always work. But like for DFS, if they're kicking a field goal, we're not getting a touchdown anyway. So for DFS, it does not matter. And frankly, it's a positive that they go for it. So that matters more for the total than it does for daily fantasy. So I think that's encouraging here. It makes me feel awesome about this one. Let's talk about the headliner first, which is, of course, David Montgomery, who was missalaried, we'll say it, at $4,000 on FanDuel for this week. Full in practice on Tuesday, Wednesday. If you look at him in his full games this year, Montgomery averaged 79.7 yards from scrimmage per game, 31% red zone share. It's a 14-game sample for him. $4,000, like how much is too much? Does the limit exist? Where are we going with Montgomery across a 2-game slate?
This one comes entirely down to how much you want to be unique.
Yeah.
Process-wise, you're getting a phenomenal running back with a great, or at least a good red zone goal line role on a team that should score more points than any, according to the betting odds. Not only on the 2-game slate, but just the whole weekend. You can overthink it and just say, like, and it's not even overthinking. I don't want to dismiss it because if David Montgomery scores 8.9 FanDuel points and you don't play him and other running backs or just other players, you flex a different position, like they erupt, you're getting a lot of leverage. I just don't really see how Montgomery isn't kind of back to normal if he's already full. Like they could have had him again, this is a Lions team with one mission, and it's to win the Super Bowl. They could
Right.
have like just scaled him back, ramped him up full on Friday. His receiving yardage numbers are absurd.
Oh,
I
yeah.
just noticed that. Like,
Well, they use them interchangeably. Like they just shift drives for these two guys,
yeah.
which is insane. So 14 game sample for him. He did not have double-digit FanDuel points in 2 of those. So if we look at like you just divide 12 by 14, that's 86%. Like I'm fine using that as a guide for how much I use him. Like I think that's fair. Is that bad process to do it that way? I don't think so personally.
Does that include his?
So he played the full game where he got hurt.
I guess
Because again, he's a psychopath. The whole team is just full of psychopaths. Yeah, that does include that game.
Okay, yeah. I mean, as someone who invested in that game for season-long purposes, he didn't do a whole lot till he got a bunch of dump-offs at the end. But
he also left the Vikings game earlier where he went under 10. So, yeah.
They love this guy too. It's very clear.
Oh, yeah.
So,
well, that's part of, frankly, this is not DFS, but he's 5-1 to score the first touchdown. I hate first touchdown scorers in general. And like, that's not a great number, if I'm being fully honest, but like, he always gets the first drive, at least when he's healthy. Like, I think this has been a pricing error in the Lions all year where like Montgomery to score the first touchdown has kind of always been a bit underrated just because he gets the first drive. So I think that's an angle. I think I'll be checking that out later as well. But I feel like they just kind of treat him full, and that's enough where 86%, 90%, somewhere in there, I'm fine with that personally.
yeah, I mean, like, I know it's not the same salary or anything, but you're kind of hoping Pacheco's role scales up.
Right.
Or you play David Montgomery for a
Right.
$1,700 savings with, noticeably higher offensive expectations.
Right.
I'm not saying the best case for Pacheco is like Montgomery's worst case, but I'm just going to be transparent. I'm playing David Montgomery in all of my lineups on the Saturday slate. I'm not going to overthink it.
Fair enough.
The odds that he just is on the sideline, like if he gets hurt again, that's completely different. You can't play things
that could happen
way.
to anyone. Yeah.
He's not going to be on the sideline if he's full in practice. It's just not
right.
They love this guy. So I wanted to at least do my due diligence and say,
yep,
if he just doesn't score, he's got, under 10 points or 11 points. You don't have to have him and you can gain a lot of leverage potentially. But
yeah,
where are these other FanDuel points coming from? Because I don't think it's really coming from the Texans as we talked about too much.
Right.
So,
well, I think that you were talking about like, you want to differentiate. The way you differentiate is put him with Gibbs.
Yes.
Like that's the go-to move on single game slates for me always is pairing the two of them together. But I think that also for a 2-game slate, it's kind of the same thinking, honestly, especially when it's like not the strongest running back slate. Like we have concerns about Mixon. We have no idea what to expect from Pacheco. And like in the games where Montgomery played, Gibson was still at 103 yards scrimmage per game, 29% red zone share. Like he can do a lot with a little. And so like, I have no objections to pairing the two of them together. And frankly, like I'd feel rock solid doing that at a pretty decent clip personally. It sounds like you're on board with that too.
I think that's kind of my default build.
Yeah. Cool.
I like it. Plugging in both these running backs. I'm not saying Gibbs is oversalaried. He's phenomenal, but say he's 82 and Montgomery's 5,000, same thing.
100%.
Like, so you're getting all of the rushing work and running back pass catching work, which is there's kind of a lot within this offense. So for me, Gibbs Montgomery is how you differentiate. So like to hear that we're on the same page there. And honestly, there are certain games where Gibbs just had 4 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Not that long ago. They could score 4 between the two of them.
Totally.
Goff has 1. And it's just oh my gosh, you might be able to limit Sam Laporta and Amon-Ra and Jameson, but you got to deal with Gibbs and Montgomery. So
Sonic and Knuckles back in action.
I think this is my favorite my favorite 2 running backs on the board. So I'm good going there first and foremost.
I agree. I think they're the 2 best running backs in the slate. Let's talk briefly about the Commanders running backs while we're here and kind of just get them out of the way. I was pretty high on Austin Eckler last week. I feel like that was probably a mistake, honestly. Like, he played about 48% of the snaps, but like they just couldn't run the football. And like, yes, facing a banged up Lions defense is different than facing Todd Bowles, but like the Buccaneers weren't that good against the run this year either. So Eckler in that game, 8 carries, 4 targets, wound up being just over 50 yards from scrimmage in that game. $5,500. Eckler or Pacheco for you?
Pacheco,
Yeah.
because while
Pacheco could be a 60-70% snap rate guy. And I don't think that happens for Eckler.
No, unless they trail right away. But
Right.
honestly, like Brian Robinson was involved as a pass catcher last week,
Was,
ran more
yeah.
routes than Eckler.
Yeah.
So you're not getting like, I'm not saying it won't pan out that way, but it's probably a common thought to say, well, they're going to play from behind, so Eckler's going to get, 8 targets.
Right.
It could happen. It's not really what we saw last week in terms of the route rate numbers. And so Robinson also 1 extra target compared to Eckler. So that, and it makes sense. We think Robinson's a good player. He's kind of struggled down the stretch, hasn't done much, but it's not a slam dunk that it's Eckler. So maybe you do something where you kind of build a lineup you like and duplicate it.
Yeah.
Swap out Robinson for Eckler. But I don't really love either guy. I'm not, this is my fault. You talked me into Eckler last week.
Sorry.
So if I didn't see anything last week, I'm okay to sort of divest from him. So I just keep going back to Gibbs and Montgomery as like you standout running backs on Saturday.
Yeah, to put a pin in those two, Robinson in the games where both he and Eckler were full, and this is a small sample of, I think it's 7 games now, where both he and Eckler are fully healthy. 71 yards per game from Robinson, rushing plus receiving. Eckler 58. So I think Robinson's the better play than Eckler, unless you think they just get toasted immediately, which is possible against the Lions. But I think Robinson has a slight edge there. Okay, let's talk quarterbacks in this game. Jaden Daniels' salary, $8,500. Jared Goff, $8,000. They are our QB1 and QB2 across the 2-game slate. I was trying to think where I'd put Daniels across the 4-game slate. I prefer Lamar. Probably prefer Allen too.
Yes.
But the fact that Daniels even makes that a discussion is a huge testament to him. So Daniels QB1 in this slate. Is he in a tier of his own, or is Goff in that tier too? Because I think you could make that argument for sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Jaden 1. I know it's kind of like flip-flopping before we really dug into this game, but the potential for Jaden's rushing is just immense. And Stroud can run, Mahomes can run, but not really like Jaden can, and he might need to. 13 carries last week for just 36 yards, but not that far removed from 16 for 127. I think he's going to have to be on the move, make some plays. I think they're going to play from behind, which you don't really want. It's a big misnomer. You don't want just passing volume as teams are getting one-dimensional.
Right.
But in this case, if he runs out of bounds for 8 yards and picks up 14 here, and like he can do that, I could see that being the case.
That was the Falcons game. I don't think he had any long runs in the Falcons game. It was all just like these like 10, 13 yarders all the time. Yeah,
like that could definitely happen. And I'm also not really convinced. I think the Lions are going to win. I think they're the best team in football.
Yeah.
But I don't think that Washington's just going to get like steamrolled from the get-go. Maybe it could happen like a turnover here. Oh, all of a sudden it's 14-0 in the first quarter, something like that. But I think they're going to be efficient. So for all of those reasons, Jaden has to be QB1, even though I prefer, we don't really dig too far into the Lions pass catchers yet. I prefer the Lions pass catchers, obviously, but I'm okay playing Jaden, not necessarily by himself. I'll at least stack him. It's a 2-game slate. What are we doing if we're not? But Jaden just has to be number 1.
Yeah, I think so too. Goff, I feel very good about because the implied total is so high. He's shown he has upside via passing yardage, but also passing touchdowns. Like, he's proven to us at this point that he's worth that. Like, if this were a full slate, a full regular season DFS main slate, if you look at just like, I have a model that looks at just like, okay, plug in my spread and my total. What are the odds this quarterback is in the perfect lineup? Not considering rushing, not considering anything like that. They'd be at 9.6%. Like, typically the highest number on the slate is like 7.5%. But there are 9.6% because his total and their implied total are so high. So that to me is why he's like in the discussion to be in the same tier as Jaden. I still would probably put Jaden at least a half tier above, but like Goff's up there. And again, that's a testament to how good he is for this game because of what he can do from an efficiency perspective.
Yeah. I was actually thinking, we talked about differentiating with Montgomery. I mean, if you want to kind of, I don't want to say galaxy brain it, but if you go Goff in the pass catchers, I don't know what you're doing at running back, really. I'm not saying you can't also play one of the running backs, but Montgomery with Goff in like pass catchers is a way to sort of be a little bit different. And, you know, Goff, look, he's got single game ceiling. Didn't really see it last time out against Minnesota, but that was kind of a strange game. Yeah. He's been performing. He's been producing. So, yeah, Jaden's number one just due to the sheer probability that he gets to 30. But Goff's also more likely to get. I'm not checking what like my model says, but in my head, Goff's more likely to get 22 than Jaden. I agree, but Jaden's more likely to get 32 than Goff.
I agree with both those statements.
Okay, so we have could be QB1 on the board. So
sure. We had this discussion earlier. Final answer, though. I give you 10 lineups. What's the distribution between Daniels, Goff, and Mahomes?
I'm okay to go. No, I'm going 5-5, Goff and Daniels, and just
no Mahomes.
If I'm playing, I like this game so much more. Where does two Mahomes lineups get me? Probably not enough.
Okay. I'll
go 5 Jaden, 4 Goff, 1 Mahomes, because I would be able to slightly tweak, because I'm going to have Chiefs pass catchers. I'll be able to tweak like one lineup into a Mahomes lineup.
Okay. I think I go 6-3-1 Jaden, Goff, Mahomes, but I am more likely to go 5-4-1 and get one more Goff in there than I am to go like 5-3-2.
Goff's fun.
Yeah, he is. He is for sure. Okay, let's talk through the pass catchers here. I adore Sam Laporta. His salary is $5,900. And, oh, dang it, signed me out of my Google sheet. Okay, now we're back in. Okay, we're good. We're good. Crisis averted. If you look at the games they played from week 13 on, so this is where Khalif Raymond got hurt, and that's where Tim Patrick stepped in as like the number 3 pass catcher. In those games, Laporta has a 20% target share. He has 18% of the D targets and 22% inside the red zone. That's a really good role for a tight end who is in an offense with an implied total as high as this one. You can see the FanDuel points have followed suit in there as well. Salary $5,900 on a full slate. Want to tie our tight ends to high implied totals? You don't get much higher than this. It has not been higher than this in a very long time. So Laporta, outside of Montgomery, might be my favorite play on the slate. Where are you on him?
Yeah, I mean his target share clearly just spiked up. He had such a slow start to the year, coming off of like tight end 1 hype from a redraft standpoint, but I know you don't look at single game target shares, not because I don't think you hate them, but you're just not really part of your process. But since week 10, Laporta has been at 25%, 18, 19, 18, 19, 22, 24, and 22. That's a really high floor of single game involvement. Yeah, he's not spiking up into the 35% range, but doesn't need to at 59 tied to this implied team total. So I'm with you, Laporta, best tight end play of the slate. Got a little bit of yardage upside. Even if he gets like 60, that's solid for a tight end. He's got touchdown equity, so I like Laporta a lot.
Yep, I do too. Okay, let's talk about the Lions first. Amon-Ra St. Brown, $8,600. Jameson Williams, $67. Tim Patrick, $52. I mentioned that sample before for him. It's still at a 9% target share in that time, 11% in the red zone. That's not enough for me when I've got Mechie, when I've got Zacchaeus, De'Ami Brown. So I won't get to Patrick at all, but like Amon-Ra 86, JMO 67. Where are you on those two guys right now?
I really like Amon-Ra always. It's really easy to talk yourself into someone who gets consistent target work. Again, I'll go from that same split, which cuts off a 32% share for Amon-Ra, but in single game shares, 33, 21, 23, 15, 32, 25, 30, 22. Like, they're not going to go through this game and just sort of not involve him. It's a question of single game upside. If he gets you 10 for 60 and 1, like he did against the Niners, for example, just as an example, that game was strange, but it's not going to burn you. So he's not a full-on priority just due to the fact that he's not a traditional, I don't want to say alpha wide receiver one, because I think that he like kind of is, but not in a sense of like from a DFS standpoint. Right. So he's more of a, I really want to get there heavily, especially whenever you just play David Montgomery and you can get them on raw, like you pointed out. So he's not someone I'm going out of my way to build into my lineups first, but is he Amon-Ra? This will tell me a lot about how you feel. Amon-Ra or Nico?
Depends. Because my thought process with Amon-Ra is Jared Goff the quarterback in the lineup? Because your assumption, if Goff is your quarterback, is 4 touchdowns. And if they're scoring 4 touchdowns through the air, Amon-Ra's target share in the red zone from week 13 on, again, that split without where Khalif Raymond got hurt, didn't really regain his role when he came back. 38% red zone target share. So if Goff has 4 touchdowns, Amon-Ra might have 3. So if I have Goff in my lineup, I prefer Amon-Ra. If I have Jaden in my lineup, I prefer Jameson Williams, and I prefer Nico Collins. So it's kind of an if-then statement for me. If Goff, then Amon-Ra. If Jaden, then Nico or JMO for me. Does that make sense, that thought process?
It does, but I think having Jaden Nico lineups is dismissive of Detroit being good as well. Because like you're not playing Jaden with the expectation that Detroit's just terrible. I mean, maybe that's your path to getting there, but if he's your QB1, that's not really the case. I think Amon-Ra scoring twice and Jaden having a big game in the sort of comeback sense is, or it's just a back and forth game. I don't want to lose sight of that. I also don't want to lose sight of the fact that Detroit's expected to score almost twice as many points as Houston, if you trust the implied team totals. I know Nico's got immense single game upside, but boundary receivers against the Chiefs, not the easiest case. So I think in a vacuum on the 2-game slate, I prefer Amon-Ra to Nico.
Okay.
That's fair. Which could go terribly wrong, but I don't fear it that much as I talk about it more.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that you can make really good Jaden Nico lineups. And if you think about like, okay, who has the best 90th percentile ceiling at each position on this slate? Jaden and Nico are the top 2 guys at those 2 positions. So that's part of the appeal for me, is kind of that thought process. Like Nico's odds of 100 plus yards, I could check this. I've not. Probably going to be better than Amon-Ra's. Amon-Ra's baseline prop is 74.5. You said Nico's is 82, correct? Earlier on?
I think 82.5. Yeah.
Yeah. So like Amon-Ra has better touchdown odds, but like yardage is typically how you accumulate a huge ceiling. And because I want that 100-yard bonus too. So that's why. But again, it's because I like Nico a lot. It's not because I dislike Amon-Ra, but for once, I actually do like him quite a bit. Where are you on JMO? Jameson Williams' salary is $6,700. Going back to that sample I cited, week 13 on for the Lions in that span, Williams, a 20% target share, 30% deep, 13% receiving in the red zone, but has gotten a decent amount of red zone rushing. So how do you feel about Jameson Williams, $6,700?
Love him. They clearly think really highly of him, despite,
he's had mistakes.
Yeah. And targets, I don't expect double-digit targets for him, but you give him a carry or two, throw him a hook and ladder, sick. I don't know how you don't really like JMO this week. If we're talking, I guess I haven't really kind of thought about this one, but in the flex, there's not a whole lot around him necessarily, but So I guess this doesn't really work. But like
I
Jameson
mean, it's
over,
him versus like Worthy or Hollywood, kind of.
yeah. I prefer JMO.
100%, yes. I agree.
Like Jameson or Joe Mixon is closer than I would want it to be, probably. But I'd still lean Mixon, if I have the salary.
But it's
But
only a lean, right?
yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Again, we're talking about a team expected to score over 30 points and a team that is expected to score under 17 points. That stuff matters. Right. Yeah, it's just touchdowns in a sense, but it's also yardage, efficiency, ball control, play count. Like it all matters. So
yeah,
love JMO, prefer him to a lot of names that I could be flexing. And if I'm playing Laporta and I'm flexing Jameson or Kelsey, I love Kelsey, but like Jameson's got immense ceiling. So,
I agree.
I'm going Jameson there.
Favorite Lions pass catcher considering position and salary is who?
Laporta.
I agree. Okay, let's talk about the Commander side of things here. Terry McLaurin, salary 76. Alameda Zacchaeus, 54. De'Ami Brown, 51. And then Zach Ertz checks in $5,500. I think the most relevant sample for them is the 4 games where there's been no Noah Brown, but then De'Ami Brown has been healthy. In that sample, Terry McLaurin actually has a 30% target share. He's at 48% deep with 30% in the red zone. Alameda Zacchaeus, 15 or 16%, 20% deep. And then Brown is at 14% overall, 16% deep. Like that's a really good share for McLaurin at 76.
Yeah, he's going to need to have a big game for them to be as competitive and as efficient as I want. But the salary is quite reasonable, honestly.
Yeah.
And I know we just did like Jameson versus Joe Mixon, but now we're talking same salary.
McLaurin by a mile over Mixon, right? No?
Depends on Mixon's health. But I mean, I don't want to get careless here, but I'm going to prioritize Terry and just hope that this game is great and not have like that fear of like, well, as I'm building lineups, I'm just too heavy on Washington, Detroit. I think Kansas City and Houston could be like 20-10, right?
Sure.
And there's not going to be a whole lot of guys who put up big games if that's the case. So I'm leaning Terry not as strongly as you, but that has a lot to do with the fact that it's a 2-game slate. And I feel like you don't need to force, I'll call Mixon a bad play. I think there's a big case for him to be made. A lot of it's going to have to be injury report related though.
Yeah. I think so. Last week we were talking about the wildcard slate. You said you adored Ladd McConkey, which worked out great for you because he was awesome. I think Terry fits in the same mold where he hasn't shown like massive yardage upside this year. Max is 125, but kind of like with Ladd, building blocks are there due to that 48% target share. We know when Daniels like has those times where he just F it, Terry down there somewhere. It's Terry every time. And those haven't broken their way. Like they haven't hit on a lot of those like YOLO balls, but they could. They are indoors. They're facing a secondary that's lost a lot of pieces. I know that they're going to have Terry and Arnold for this game because he was full in practice on Tuesday, Wednesday. But like the secondary is still pretty beat up. So like if they hit on those hero balls, which they could because they're both very good, that's enticing to me. So that's why I prefer McLaurin over Mixon in the flex at 76.
Yeah, his receiving prop is 68.5. That's really strong. He is clearly going to be he needs to be the focal point of this offense. He also you talked about the hero balls. He's got that like
the money
it's
ball
forever going to be. What's that?
He's got the probably spikes in the money ball numbers you have.
He does.
Is it money ball?
I say money target because it's specifically the targets, but
Moneyball is funnier. I don't know if it's probably copyrighted. So I don't know if we can say that, but whatever.
But
sue me, Michael Lewis.
For the full season, like he's got a 23% target share, but 37% of those money targets where he's inside the 10 when the ball gets to him when he's targeted or in the end zone. Like he's kind of the prototypical guy for for those numbers. So and he's scoring kind of due for some negative regression there. But what I was getting at, and the reason I paused is because I don't want to. It's so fine to call him Cortland Sutton balls, but like he can go up and get it, and there are better examples, but Cortland Sutton just had a tear of those, and so we've kind of. I like Terry, and he's going to be part of a lot of stacks, and he works with Goff stacks too.
Yeah,
like
he does. Let's talk about the salary savers in Zacchaeus and De'Ami Brown. The way I want to frame this is, let's say you're looking for a flex play below Laporta. So we're talking DeAndre Hopkins, Isaiah Pacheco, Mechie, Eckler, Zacchaeus, De'Ami Brown, and then Montgomery's already in your lineup, so you can't include him. Who is your favorite out of those like salary savers at flex?
This is where you kind of get tested.
Yeah.
Of what do you believe in more?
Right.
Like Mechie's role's good. I don't know that the offense is going to do a lot.
Yeah.
Pacheco's great. I'm hoping that his role gets better. If it stays the same, it's still fine.
Yeah.
But if I'm playing like a smaller tournament or cash game, I think Pacheco still makes the most sense.
I agree.
These value receivers could get blanked, and it shouldn't shock us. If it shocks you, we probably are a little.
You haven't played long enough.
Yeah, a little optimistic. If you're playing a tournament and you're playing Jaden and Gibbs and Montgomery and Laporta, I want a Commander's pass catcher. I'm gonna go Zacchaeus for the longer track record. De'Ami Brown, had a big game, but Zacchaeus has been more involved for longer. He's not that far removed from multi-touchdown games. I know like single game yardage is not quite there, but you don't. If you just say if you can't give me 100 yards to receiver, you're not gonna be able to fill out a lineup this week. So
yeah,
I kind of am leaning Zacchaeus. Where are you?
Probably the same. Zacchaeus, best Brown in all three of the target share things I look at across the 4-game sample with both of them being active. But I think I'd actually go Pacheco for tournaments 2 above both of them, and I'd probably go Mechie above them, just because like Mechie's going to get 6 to 8 targets. They might get there. So
yeah, okay. If Mechie doesn't score though, it's just don't.
Fair. Yeah.
I don't know. And these guys aren't guaranteed to score, but
I rank a Pacheco 1. I feel pretty good about that. I go Mechie 2, and then I get to Zacchaeus 3 for me. I think is the way I rank those guys.
I'm not going to fight you on that. I'll fight you on
okay.
Anything else, but not that.
Any final thoughts for you on this game?
No, but briefly talk to me about defense on the 2-game slate, because that's something that's easy to overlook. I know you don't care, but like you have to care. So you're going to see it. You're going to make sure you have enough salary to get to the Chiefs.
I'll probably just put them in there and figure it out. Yeah. I think I can this week with Montgomery being there.
I think okay. You have to kind of do.
Who are your loves for the Saturday slate?
David Montgomery. Jahmyr Gibbs. Laporta, JMO.
Yeah.
All Lions.
Dan Skipper.
Those are the names.
Dan Skipper in the player pool?
I hope so.
He is not. Tragic.
I think that's what's jumping out. Like after this conversation, I like the Commanders. I love Jaden, so I should probably put him on the list, but it's a lot to do with how many Lions can I play with and stomach.
Yeah, to me it's Montgomery, Laporta, Jaden Daniels are going to be my loves for this Saturday only slate. Let's shift focus now and talk about the Sunday slate, beginning with the first game on this slate. That is the Los Angeles Rams taking on the Philadelphia Eagles. Right now at FanDuel Sportsbook, Eagles favored by 6.5. Total in this game up a point from where it was earlier on to 44.5. My model agrees with that move. I hate this over. I show value in it. I hate it. That makes me very sad because I respect the Eagles defense a lot. The Rams defense moving outdoors. I know it's hypocritical to be like, the Rams going outdoors. And I talk about the Texans.
I don't know how to feel about the Texans, man.
I do. CJ Stroud's a good football player, and I'm fine admitting that. I don't know. I feel meh on this game. Where are you at with this one?
I think this one has the potential to be pretty ugly. it's like a mid-level total, all things considered. And I don't really anticipate. I don't know how this game gets back and forth.
Yeah.
Unless Saquon just goes bonkers, which he might be able to do,
which he did against them earlier
the
this year.
Rams for 302 scrimmage yards. But I think Stafford's playing some great football.
Yeah.
Last year he started off a little slow, came on strong. This year the receivers got hurt. Cooper Kupp, I know, I'm just gonna say you're not his biggest fan necessarily. He's clearly not himself right now. I think it's more than just like, oh, he's skipping breakfast, so Stafford's icing him out. I think he's clearly hurt, but Puka Nacua has one of the best workloads in all of football and has for weeks now. That's really fun. I think Matthew Stafford's playing some good football. I think that the path for this game to be exciting is for Saquon to go absurd and then probably lose all his touchdowns to Jalen Hurts, and for Philly not to be able to slide on Puka, which I think they could probably slow him down a little bit because they got some great defensive backs and great overall defensive scheme.
Yeah, and their scheme revolves around like shutting down big plays. And like that's kind of a bummer because like Puka can get those in the game since he returned, omitting week 18, obviously. 33% target share, 34% deep, 30% in the red zone. Like chef's kiss. Like that's a phenomenal workload. He gets rushing attempts too. The issue that I have, I think this is the reason why I'm like meh on this game, is you look at the salaries and all the flex players. You're not getting discounts on anybody who is relevant. Saquon Barkley, 93, Puka, 85, AJ Brown, 84, Kyron, 77. That's like an okay salary for his. So I guess that's my main issue is I love Saquon, I love Puka, but like, do I want to use Puka Nacua and make it harder for me to get to Lamar Jackson, make it harder for me to get to Josh Allen? And like, honestly, with them facing a tough defense, going outdoors, I need to do what I can to get to Derrick Henry. I need to do what I can to get to Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. So to me, Puka gets shoved down just because of the context of the slate. His role is amazing. He's a really good football player, but the context of the slate pushes me lower on him.
That is really easy to default to. So I need to I try to plant little flags and say, yeah, it's easy just not to play Puka because you can play.
Right.
You can kind of, I don't know. It's not that you can play everyone because you literally can't play Puka if you're doing other things, but you can play a lot of studs in a lineup this week because receiver overall on this Sunday slate is pretty terrible.
Yeah.
So it's not that hard. You're basically betting again. We do this with quarterback most obviously. It's the easiest one. It's but on a 2-game slate right now, you're betting against Puka having a big game. You're betting against AJ Brown and his 3 targets. Just kind of getting his rating. He's got to get his resolution in for books this year, so he's starting early. He's going to get 5 targets at this rate. Devontae Smith I think he's great.
Yeah,
but the volume's not there. Zay's banged up, if anything. Like, there's just not a lot. So you're basically kind of betting against Puka. And as scary as that is, this is not the scariest game to do that.
Right. And I also think that there are value receivers who I feel okay about. Like Khalil Shakir is pretty solid 61. I like Bateman despite last week being annoying at 62. I feel fine with Keon Coleman, frankly. And so it's like, I can save some salary. Like I'll need to get one of these guys in there just because can I go with 3 scrubs? But I'd much rather spend down at receiver than running back on this slate. And that means being lower on Puka. I agree that I should have some because there are a lot of paths to Puka being good, but it's just, he's not going to be my highest priority stud. He's behind Derrick Henry. He's behind Saquon Barkley. He's behind Jalen Hurts. He's behind Josh Allen. At some point, someone's got to get lopped off.
He's behind Lamar and Josh Allen, not
What
Or
did
is
I
he
say?
behind Hurts? You said
Oh,
Jalen
no,
Hurts.
no, he's at Hurts. Sorry, I misspoke. You're right.
Okay,
Thank you.
just wanted to make sure because
Yep.
I talked a little Hurts before the show, and but yeah, I mean, you're getting on this slate Saquon, who easily led in scrimmage yards per game, and Derrick Henry, who was second.
Yeah.
You don't just pencil that in necessarily, but it's hard. As much as we love Puka, it's hard to default there. But I want to
Yeah.
be conscious of that and say I easily could get burned by Puka just as much. So
Correct.
default, baseline process is Saquon and Derrick Henry over Puka.
Yep.
But who else in this game are you kind of interested in?
Not much, frankly.
Yeah.
Kyron Williams, 77. Like, that's a good salary for him. But like in the second game, you got James Cook at 7,000. I think if you're talking about like who is more undersalaried, James Cook is quite a bit more undersalaried than Kyron is. So I'd rather take the savings. Kyron's been fine in the games, full games this year, 92.5 yards scrimmage, a 49% red zone share. There's no Blake Corum now. Like if he hadn't gotten like kind of banged up and he hadn't fumbled in that game, I think he would have played every snap on Monday night. He didn't. But like Cook for me is well above Kyron Williams. So I can't get enthusiastic there. The only guy I'm like, yeah, okay, I feel pretty good about it is like Tyler Higbee at 52. Because like his role before he got hurt was awesome. He was limited in practice. I forgot to mention the injuries for this game. Limited in practice on Wednesday. Should be good to go. Sean McVay said after the game, yeah, he was spitting up blood, but he's fine, which is weird and concerning. But might snow in this game too. 8-mile-per-hour winds, so the weather's not bad. I know snow is there, but like I don't care about snow personally. So Higbee is like good, but I also prefer Mark Andrews, prefer Isaiah Likely, prefer Dalton Kincaid. So I think Saquon's the only guy I view as a priority in this game. That's the way I'd phrase it. Is that egregious? Am I overlooking anybody?
No. Do you like this game
Okay.
more or less than Chiefs Texans?
My model has a total higher for this one, but I disagree with that. I prefer Chiefs Texans more than I prefer like of the four quarterbacks. If this helps you track sentiment, of the four quarterbacks, I am most likely to play Mahomes out of those two games.
That's fair.
Okay. Any other priorities for you in this game? Like anybody you're like, oh, this guy's undersalaried. Oh, this guy's role is this. Because I don't feel a whole lot that feels awesome in this game.
I'm with you. I don't see like I think I guess I should clarify. I like Kyron more than you do, just due to it's similar to Mixon. If Mixon were fully healthy, it'd be a similar case where it's like I don't love the offense, but we're kind of you don't want to like ignore an 85% snap rate for a guy who gets a lot of red zone work on a 2-game slate. It's really easy to kind of like look at James Cook, say the game's more fun. His role could get, he has room for growth. He's much more explosive. I don't want to overlook Kyron, but
sure.
I think he's such like Saquon and Henry are such bigger priorities. And then you have to get salary to get up to one of the quarterbacks that Kyron has to kind of get cut out.
Yeah.
But I just kind of wanted to answer your question. The way that I'm answering it is I want to make sure I made the case for Puka as like, don't forget about him. I think I kind of need to say that for Kyron as well. Cause while we're not the biggest Kyron fans on our typical show, and we're talking about 26 teams and running backs with higher ceilings, Kyron getting you 17 is not outrageous to think about this week. And that's probably going to get it done too. So,
and his salary's come down quite a bit. Like when we were like annoyed with him, it was when his salary was like 9,000 and it's 77. So like, that's way different. And you're right. It's 2-game slate too. So it's more about game environment and like Eagles defense than it is for me about him and his role.
So if you go with Lamar, who's just lower salaried, but Henry and Saquon, and you plug in the Rams defense at 35, you're at 57.80 left. So like if we can talk all we want about love Henry, love Barkley, want to get to them, and a quarterback who's one of the two true studs on the board, and receiver's not great, so you can kind of just spend down. Yeah, like you can construct a lineup, things get tight. So Kyren has
lineup.
What's that?
I'm using this lineup.
Right, like this is. But if you want to kind of get to Josh, I don't know if you can get to Josh Allen necessarily.
Yeah.
But like, things dry up. So going through this thought process, does this make you higher on Kyren Williams at all?
No, because like,
so where are you? Okay, so then where are you?
It's not about him. It's about stars and scrubs, and he's not in really either bucket for me.
But like,
it's like more about roster construction than him.
Yes, but when you build that lineup, which is like what we're doing in theory, we want Lamar and we really want to get to Henry and Barkley. You had James Cook in that, right? Already.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Like, what are you doing to build, like, to round out a lineup there? There might be one or two paths.
Yeah, but I'm going to use that one path.
Okay, so now you're building one lineup and that's it.
Yeah.
Okay. This is the worst.
I'm not doing this in I'm not putting James Cook or Henry and Barkley in every lineup. So it's like,
I know, but like if you bump down from Derrick Henry in a Lamar lineup, doesn't that make you like Kyren feel more impactful?
Sure. Or I could.
That's what I'm asking. That's what I'm
James
asking.
Cook in. Well, I prefer James Cook over Kyren, so I could like put in Derrick Henry. Put out James Cook.
You already have James Cook in that lineup.
Yeah. So
like what are you doing instead of this? That's what I'm asking.
I mean, like I'm fine with Kyren, but it's like he's not a bigger priority for me than James Cook, than these other guys. So like, yeah, I might wind up on him, but I'm not seeking him out.
Sorry, which other guys are you talking about?
What do you mean? Then Saquon, Henry, Cook. I think he's fourth. Firm fourth.
But when you build a lineup and you want to have Lamar or Josh Allen in it, as well as two of those other backs, and you see what it actually does, Kyren jumps out to me more as like, okay, I would rather play. Oh my gosh! If you play, this is absurd. If you play Lamar, who I'm not saying I even like more than Josh Allen, I'm just saying he's lower salaried. And you want two of Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, and James Cook in your lineup, which you do now. Please fill out a lineup from here. Yes, I know the Derrick Henry, but you. This is outrageous for anybody.
I don't know. I might wind up on Kyren there, but like again,
that is what I'm saying.
Okay. But like that's what the phrasing on it is. He is not a priority to me. We're saying the same thing. I'm saying he's not a priority to me. I might wind up on him, but he's not a priority. That's what I'm saying. He's not a priority, not a guy I build around. I'm not actively seeking him out.
Yes, that's also what I'm saying. But what I'm saying,
we're saying the same thing.
No, we kind of are. This time I disagree on that. You're not really listening to what I'm saying.
Like, are you saying Kyren compared to other guys?
I'm not prioritizing Kyren over those other three running backs, but you have a very narrow path to a Lamar, Henry, Saquon, Cook lineup.
Yeah.
I would rather bump down from Saquon or Henry to Kyren than like just play a bunch of total off-the-wall receivers. Therefore,
every receiver
I'm gonna have
on the
more
slate is a total off-the-wall receiver. They all suck. So let's embrace the suck.
Jim, you just built a lineup and you had to fill out like another. You had
I had to put Samuel in it. I know. You're right. Like, did I like myself putting Curtis Samuel in there? No. Would I rather do that than play Kyren over Saquon freaking Barkley or Derrick freaking Henry? I'd rather go down to Curtis Samuel. Sure, it's fine.
Okay,
I'm cool with it.
All right, so 0 Kyren for Jim.
No, I'll have Kyren. I'm saying
no. You said no. You want to play Henry and Saquon, you just play them, you don't play Kyren.
Like in a single lineup, he's not touching it. I'm going with the mega stars build.
I know.
Like
Jim,
again, we're saying the same thing.
We talk about one line. We talk about one lineup, and I said this is like what we want to do. But if you're building a secondary lineup, there's not a whole lot of ways to pivot
Yeah.
from that.
Secondary
So-
lineup, sure. I'll come off. I mean, I'll go Kyren.
I can't believe this, man.
It's
This
not a
is
priority.
outrageous.
Not a priority. Anything else in this game?
No, let's please move on.
Okay, let's talk about the banger then. That is the Bills and the Ravens on Sunday night. Right now, FanDuel Sportsbook, Ravens slight favorites, -118 on the money line. Bills even money. Total in this game is at 51.5. Weather here, 8-mile-per-hour winds. That's fine. It's chilly, 12 degrees, but who cares, frankly. Injuries, Zay Flowers didn't practice Wednesday due to his knee injury. Still has an outside shot to play, according to Ian Rappaport. Yeah. Ray Davis limited in practice on Wednesday, despite suffering a nasty looking concussion on Sunday. Typically, if a guy gets in a limited session with a concussion on Wednesday, he plays. I'm still skeptical of that personally, just because that one looked pretty bad. So I'm kind of thinking he probably won't go. I don't know if that matters a ton, because like he wasn't super involved before that anyway. But leaning towards his not playing. So what are your overall thoughts in this game? Ravens Bills on Sunday night.
I love both quarterbacks a lot. I love Derrick Henry. I love James Cook. The pass catchers, I don't love in a traditional sense, but
yeah,
I'm going to get there. Khalil Shakir leads the slate, this game in receiving prop yardage at 50.5. Rashad Bateman at 43.5 is the only other name above, I think 37.5 is third for Mark Andrews. That's a prop. That's not, this is what they're going to do. But there's also not a ton of single game receiving yardage upside from either. Like if we're not really factoring in Zay Flowers here, nobody's got 150 in them within the realistic range of outcomes. Sure, somebody could do it if things break their way, but that does kind of change things. However, both quarterbacks have rushing and rushing touchdown upside, so I'm not that concerned. But I'm going to more round out lineups with these pass catchers than feel like I'm actively stacking. And I'm just going to say it once more. If this is how I feel about the pass catchers, and I'm building iterations and variations off of that priority number one lineup construction, I have to be okay with someone like Kyren, because I don't really want to have access to a ton of $4,900 receivers who might get 20 yards.
Yeah.
That's where I was coming from.
Okay. Let's talk about the quarterbacks in this game. Josh Allen salary, $9,000. Lamar Jackson, 87. Preference for you?
I think so. Like, I keep going back and forth. Like, Allen's at home.
Yeah.
His pass catchers or whatever. So are Lamar's, but I think like Lamar has more yardage upside. Allen, to me, has much more touchdown upside as a rusher, because he doesn't have Derrick Henry to contend with. He'll get more of those like shoves at the goal
And they
line.
don't tush push with Lamar. Yeah.
So I keep going back and forth. We're talking, you asked me the breakdown of what I would do at quarterback on Saturday. On Sunday, I'm going 5-5.
100%. Yes. I could not agree more.
If you really made me say one, it's probably going to be Lamar, due to the fact that we just tried to build a lineup with Henry and Barkley, with James Cook, with the lowest salary defense, and things get really tight. So $300 might be the difference of like making that lineup work or not. But I don't have a strong leaning, honestly.
Yeah. I go Lamar. I agree with you where it's 5-5, 5-10 lineups. If it's one though, I go Lamar because of the rushing yardage. That wild card game, 15 rushes for 81 yards for Lamar. He has now gone. He's had 100 plus rushing yards in 3 out of 7 playoff games, and like that's a 100-yard bonus now. So, and like they didn't have to do a whole lot against the Steelers because they were up by 21-0 at halftime. It got a little bit hairy in the second half, but like if they're pedal to the metal for 4 quarters, like he's going to get 100 yards. I know his odds of 100 plus rushing yards are not going to be 100% in that situation, but like 100 plus rushing yards for Lamar is plus 850 at FanDuel Sportsbook. I like that. But like that's enticing to me.
What does your model say about this game? Like which side do you favor?
Oh, I've got, so if Zay plays, it's Ravens by 0.6. If Zay does not play, it's Ravens by 0.2. So basically in line with market.
Yeah. All right. Who do you think is going to win?
I don't know. I know that's like a dumb thing. So like if we're talking about like stylistically, so like before I ran my stuff and before I saw markets and thinking about this game, it's like, okay, I think the Ravens are a bad matchup for the Bills because the Bills are most likely to get got by like very physical teams, at least based on my perception of them. And it does not get more physical than Derek Bleep and Henry. So I think they're just a bad matchup for this Bills defense. So I'd lean towards the Ravens, and I was kind of hoping it'd be like, oh, maybe the Ravens would be like, plus 110, plus 108 in the money line. And I can like invest there. And it's like, nope, the market was in line with me. And I'm like, cool, I'll just set it out and bet the over instead.
Yeah, I think Baltimore, if I had to pick a side right now, I'm going Baltimore. So that's another reason for me to get toward Lamar in this one. But Lamar and Henry, we talked about like Montgomery and Gibbs together.
Yeah.
Lamar and Henry together. Yeah, they're going to be, again, it's a 2-game slate, at most a 4-game slate. That's a really interesting way to kind of go on the 4-game slate, though, too, in case they just put the hammer down. But I'm leaning Lamar, but again, 5-5 for me out of 10.
And part of the reason I go there, despite loving Lamar's rushing, is that Josh Allen is plus 750 to score 2 rushing touchdowns in this game. Well, score 2 touchdowns. He could get a receiving touchdown from himself. That could happen too.
Or a pitch from Amari Cooper.
Correct. Which technically was a receiving touchdown from himself. Yes. Yeah, he pulled a Mariota. Shout out Marcus. So that's why it's 5-5. Is because Allen can get there, and you said this. Allen gets there via touchdowns, Lamar via yardage. I'll take either route. I think that's fine.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the running backs. Any concerns on Henry? Because I don't really have any personally.
No. The pure rushing volume has been there. 20 carries or more in 4 straight. Low water mark of 138 rushing yards. He can get some targets. It's not as good. His target share does sway a lot with Justice Hill active, so I don't want to lose sight of that. But you just kind of, I think for me at this rate in the season, kind of asked this during the regular season a little bit, but in the playoffs, it's what are the odds the Ravens walk away from this game with a loss and say, well, we should have got Derrick Henry more than 14 carries? Like, that's not happening. He's getting unless, again, it's one of those, Buffalo's somehow up 17-0 at the end of the first quarter.
Sure.
Just some fluky thing happens.
Yeah.
I feel so safe with Henry's volume and his ability to make it every time he gets the ball. It's kind of crazy where I would say, and maybe I'm losing sight of this, but in terms of healthy backs that we've seen this year, there's Saquon and there's Henry. Of every time they get the ball, I'm like, he's scoring. Like, I don't care where they are. It's like he could just rip off 47 yards and a touchdown. Like,
it's absurd.
I don't want to overthink it. I want to get to Henry, and I know the salary's high, but it's deserved.
Okay, so you don't want to build an all jabroni lineup of these receivers, which means you got to come off of one of Henry or Saquon. Who is your preference between Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley on the 2-game slate?
Henry.
You're coming off of Henry? You prefer Henry?
No, I prefer Henry.
Okay.
I think
I got Saquon.
Do you prefer? I mean, that was my head lean.
Yeah.
But my heart is like, again, Derrick Henry's going to get the ball a lot. So it should Saquon. Yeah. But I think the fact that I like this game so much more is why I feed to the fire.
That's okay.
Derrick Henry.
That's a good tiebreaker. Because I was basing it kind of on yardage. In their relevant games this year, Saquon 139.1 yards from scrimmage per game. Henry 127.8. But like you said, his usage has been awesome down the stretch when they've needed to win games to win the division, stuff like that. So, and the environment, like you said, is better here too. So Probably should go Henry, but my thought was Saquon, kind of like you said as well there. But I'd rather do both personally. And I think we know the answer on this. But for the 4-game slate, we prefer Henry and Barkley over Jahmyr Gibbs as well, correct?
I do, yeah. They don't have a David Montgomery to deal with. Saquon's minus 170 at FanDuel Sportsbook to score. Henry's minus 210, so another slight edge for Henry. But that's a lot with game environment.
Yep. Okay. Let's talk James Cook then.
Yeah. I'm going Henry because he'll get carries from the 1.
Okay. Fair enough. Let's talk James Cook. Salary $7,000. Why did this go down? That's my question for you, because he was phenomenal in the first part of that game. Like I slacked you this, but I was like beating myself up. It's like, okay, like I had some FOMO James Cook lineups, but I should have been higher on him because we thought his snap rate would not go up. But if his snap rate goes up with how efficient he is and how efficient this offense is, that's like the Bucky Irving situation we saw earlier this year, where every touch is so efficient that every marginal touch he gets is worth a lot. And in the first 3 quarters last week, Cook had a 57% snap rate. For him, that's up about 10, 13 percentage points from where it typically is. So his salary goes down, facing a very good rush defense, but he gets work in the passing game too. No, he hasn't recently. But like overall he does. So Cook, I think, is like, that's why I kept building the Henry, Saquon, Cook lineup, is because I think he's an awesome play on this 2-game slate. Where do you settle in on James Cook?
I'm in line with you. He is my RB3. I would love to have lineups with those 3 and one of Lamar or Josh Allen. I was with you whenever you slacked me, and I was like, I kind of had those same thoughts beforehand, but I'm like, it's James Cook.
Yeah.
He's my nemesis at this rate. Just because he kind of outperforms his snap rate all the time, just because he gets such an elevated opportunity per snap rate. He got the ball in 70% of his snaps last week. That's absurd.
Yeah.
He can do it again. The snap rate was scaled back for the full game. You mentioned like 55, 56% through the first 3 quarters. He was at 51% in the first half. That game it didn't matter. He's got room to grow. So he's my RB3. Much prefer him to Kyron. Mm-hmm. I will clarify that so that Jim doesn't yell at me again.
Thank you.
And I will have a lot of James Cook this week.
Yep. He is a very good play. Like him quite a bit. So let's talk now about the pass catchers, because that is a much more complex discussion. I lean towards thinking Zay Flowers will not play in this game, just based on the fact that he hasn't practiced yet. Apparently, I can't remember if it was Tom Pelissero or someone mentioned that at the game last week, Zay had a limp. Like when he, wasn't playing, obviously, but like seemed to have a limp. So I lean towards thinking he won't play. If we look at the games where Zay either left early or didn't play, so this is weeks 18 and last week, Mark Andrews leads with a 22% target share with a 38% deep target share. Rashad Bateman, 20% overall, 25% deep. Isaiah Likely, 18% overall, 25% deep. So to me, that says all 3, if there's no Zay, are really good plays. Like Andrews, underside 59, Likely underside 51. Bateman, probably about right at 62. How do you feel about those 3 if we assume Zay Flowers does not play in this game?
I feel pretty good, and I'm going to have enough Lamar. I'll play these guys too with Henry because there's only so many touchdowns that are going to go around. So even if these guys don't score, that's fine. I really like Bateman from a talent standpoint. I'm not alone in that, of course, but
no,
he can score touchdowns.
Yeah. He can catch long balls.
I want to make sure that I get my expectations straight, because this game could be really run heavy from sort of both sides. I mean, James Cook had 23 carries last week. It could be a case where they try to play a little keep away. That's not to say that I think it's going to be low scoring and dull. It's just going to be efficient rushes and some probably explosive plays. But I really like Bateman. I have a hard time with him versus Shakir. I know the ceiling in theory is much higher for Rashad Bateman.
Yeah.
But Khalil Shakir is in that same. I know we're talking Ravens, but that's got to be part of this conversation. And then for the tight ends, they always have building blocks in terms of their talent and being on the field. It's just a matter of how many targets, how many. let me kind of put it this way. What's your sort of pass attempt expectation for Lamar in this game, knowing that his recent games were 21, 32, 15, 23, 25?
29?
30? I
30?
was thinking like 20. I was thinking like 27, so not that far off, but
I did just look at FanDuel Research's projections and see what they had. I cheated. So that's what they had is 29. So like I think that's kind of where I settle in at.
So FanDuel Sportsbook has him at 28.5.
Yeah. So that's around where I settle in. But it's concentrated enough and like they're efficient enough where it's like these guys can be solid.
But they're not. I don't know if anyone's getting 7 targets in this offense.
Probably not.
So that's tough. But
yeah,
I still like them. I still like the touchdown probability.
Salaries are low, it counts for that. Like when you look at their salaries and look at the efficiency in those targets, that's why we're okay with them. That's what I would say. Yeah, for sure.
There's also not a whole lot else to go to on this slate.
Yeah, there's really not. If you're looking for like a true dumpster dive of a play, Tylan Wallace did play quite a bit in that game without Zay Flowers. It seems like he's ahead of Nelson Aguilar right now. 2 targets, 21 yards. His salary is $4,500. Like if you're like dumpster diving, like I've seen worse plays. I've played worse plays than Tylan Wallace. He's pretty good in college, I thought. It's been a while since he was in college, but I think he'd be like the dumpster dive play for me on the Ravens versus going to Nelson Aguilar or someone like that. It'd be Tylan Wallace for me. But
41% route rate last week.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Like I said, dumpster diving. Okay.
No. Any thoughts? You're just going to be down here all the time. So this is the only line of construction you're considering. So.
Yeah, it is. Okay. Bills pass catchers. You mentioned Shakir. His salary is $6,100. If we look at the wild card game and like, don't look at like 1 game samples, but I think for them, it's actually pertinent because it's like, I don't know what they've been doing all year. Shakir led with 19 routes. Dalton Kincaid had 17. Keon Coleman, 16. Ty Johnson 15, Curtis Samuel 14, Matt Collins 14, Amari Cooper and 11.
And I won't say everyone's, but that puts Khalil Shakir's route rate at 59% for perspective. Right.
So they
led the team at under 60% route rate.
He did get 6 targets, which is most on the team.
Yes.
So you kind of alluded to this before. Do you prefer Shakir or Bateman? Shakir 61, Bateman 62.
I should prefer Shakir from a target projection standpoint, but again, pen to paper, clicking in names, I feel like Rashad Bateman is more likely to help me win in DFS. Yeah. So I'm going to lean Bateman.
I'll go Shakir just because it's a 2-game slate. I have issues with him for a full slate, but not really a 2-game slate as much. Yeah, I don't know. Like they seem to want the ball in his hands. That's true for Bateman too, but it's enough for me to prefer Shakir. I went Bateman initially, when I was building that dummy lineup before I put Bateman in there, but I guess I'd probably go Shakir. And then I go Dalton Kincaid too. Maybe, I don't know. Where's Kincaid stack up for you, but compare it to Andrews and Likely?
You're more of a Kincaid guy lately than I am. And like the building blocks tend to be there for him, but
never pays off.
It's kind of like, was it Tyler Higbee last year? That kind of like,
I don't
target share was good, but like
maybe it was last year
before. I don't know, but like,
yeah,
it's not exactly the same, but
it's pretty similar.
He's fine. I think I'd prefer Mark Andrews though, as hey, Zay's.
We've seen it with him.
We've seen it with him. He's got double touchdown upside. His red zone rolls kind of spiked in recent weeks, which is nice. So I'm going to go Andrews over Kincaid. I know it's a $500 salary difference. I'd probably go Kincaid over Likely.
Okay.
Although like, honestly, Isaiah Likely he's got pretty big single game upside.
If you look at the games they played with everyone healthy, and that includes when Zay's healthy. So like this is a larger sample, but it includes Zay. Even those games, Andrews is a 26% target share and Likely's a 24%. Like they just throw to the tight ends in the red zone. Like that's great. Kincaid, if you look at the games, 6 games with everyone active for them, a 19% red zone target share, 18% overall, 22% deep. So again, building blocks for him. But it hasn't happened, and it's kind of annoying. So
yeah, I think I'm gonna go Andrews, Likely, Kincaid there, because along with like part of the reason that Kincaid's I'm assuming we have the same 6-game sample here. Part of the reason that he's like not getting as much just overall work is Keon Coleman's got a pretty appealing profile. 22% red zone share in these 6 games, with basically doing our best to kind of get the key players healthy. So 28% air yard share, 22% red zone, but 29% of those money targets, he can get those like, hey, we're on the 27, throw it into the end zone. Like those targets don't get accounted for.
He can get a target inside the 10 from the other 27.
He can do that as well. So I think there's some appeal for Keon Coleman. And like he's going to be the type of name where if you try to get a Lamar, Saquon, Henry, James Cook lineup, you're going to have to be living there. He's got a little more juice than that. Again, nothing down here on this Sunday slate is safe with like the receivers, but Coleman again has those building blocks, and I think that's appealing.
When I'm building out that lineup of like the super top heavy one with Lamar, Henry, Saquon, and James Cook, Keon Coleman's the first guy I put in there for like the value receivers because of the stuff you mentioned. His overall target share is fine. It's 16% in that time too. So like I'll take that. Like 16% overall, 24% deep, 22% in the red zone. And you mentioned the money targets too. Like, yeah, I'll take that. That's fine. So he's the first guy I put in that scenario. So I agree with you. He's a solid play. Cooper 54. He should not be higher salary than Keon Coleman with the way things are broken down there. So yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so I don't love it just due to the overall target shares here. Again, went kind of noted the receiving props on FanDuel Sportsbook being pretty low. So it's more of like you kind of got to like get there. And for that one lineup, maybe 2 lineups, try to build that same lineup and get another 300 to get up to Josh Allen with a similar build. You can make it work, but I do not want to build 10 lineups and have to play like 3 receivers in this range in every one of those lineups. I think long term that's not
doing it for all 10. Never said that. I said it was for one lineup. Who's the priority? It's not Kyron. Just saying. Okay. Any final thoughts for you on this game?
No, I feel any like secondary running backs. Justice Hill.
We should have talked Ty Johnson, Justice
Johnson.
Hill. So their salaries for this week, Ty Johnson, 52. Justice Hill is 54. Johnson has become their third down back, and Josh Allen thinks he's the best third down back in football, which I think is egregious, but also like go off, Josh. And it's worked out. So if you look at the games, I've got 13 games with Johnson snaps being up. Maybe I should go with a smaller sample because like he's had huge games in like the latter portion of that, but still 35.8 yards in scrimmage per game. Justice Hill is at 40 yards per game. How do they grade out to you compared to the dumpster diver receivers we were talking about before?
Kind of don't mind them because they're easy to build cases. Like, hey, I think the Ravens play from ahead, therefore there's some pass catching work for Ty Johnson. But these guys also are kind of like value back plus. I actually we talked about like, James Cook should have kind of been there. I was almost there with like Justice Hill last week because we're talking small slates. We're talking game theory. His role's not terrible by any means for the salary. And yeah, you want to look at, the 6 carries, whatever, but he's not going to get a lot of carries. But when you talk about targets and they're worth twice as much, he basically had a decent workload last week. And if he scores, like it's not the end of the world. I think I probably prefer Ty Johnson.
Sure.
Just due to like the potential that he has like 8 targets, just because Josh Allen treats him kind of, but he also gets like downfield heaves sometimes.
Yeah, he does.
So I'd probably lean toward Ty Johnson, but if we're talking, who do I prefer between, I don't know, like Amari Cooper or Ty Johnson?
Oh, Ty Johnson.
I think it's Ty Johnson.
Yeah.
Like Keon Coleman over both of these guys.
Yeah. Agreed.
Let me sort by salary here.
So while you're sorting by salary, going back to the 6-game sample with everyone healthy, Khalil Shakir's overall target share is 24%, but he has an 11% deep target share. Ty Johnson's is 13%. His deep target share is 13%. It's higher than Dawson Knox. It's higher than Khalil Shakir, higher than Amari Cooper, higher than Mac Hollins, higher than Curtis Samuel. Like, it's great. His 11% red zone target share is also equal to Shakir's in that sample and above Cooper, Hollins, and Samuel as well. So, yeah, we should have talked about him earlier. Good call.
So I'm going, there's basically Amari Cooper at 55. We'll start there. I'm going, and again, I slightly prefer Ty Johnson, but either kind of one of these guys. I'm going the backs over Cooper.
Yep.
Keon Coleman over the backs.
Yep. Backs over Curtis Samuel, right? And Mac Hollins.
Yeah.
Yep, I agree.
Did Nelson Aguilar?
He was active last week but ran behind Tylan Wallace.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
29% or 30%.
Because he was inactive in week 18. That's when Zay got hurt mid-game.
He was, yeah. 30% route rate. Anthony Miller got some targets, but just a 19% route rate for him. So
I did not realize Anthony Miller was in the league until yesterday or last week. I was like, oh, good for him. Glad to see he's back.
Yeah. So Coleman over the backs, but I guess the backs over everyone else, right?
I think so. Yeah. Good call. Okay. Who are your loves for the Sunday slate? Your priorities?
Well, Kyron Williams, of course. Gosh. My priority. No, it's going to be Derrick Henry. I mean, I think it has to be like Derrick Henry, Saquon, and Lamar / Allen because I don't love anybody else. And I'm okay to say that and sort of begrudgingly play the other players. I guess I could throw James Cook in there, but
I love James Cook and I love Keon Coleman is how I grade the rest.
I prefer, out of the others, like Keon Coleman stands out, but he's not.
I'm just going to use him a lot because it's a low salary, decent role compared to salary. And so it's like, I don't hate myself putting him in my lineup, despite having a low salary. And that to me is enough to be a love. So I'll put him in there too. Okay. Any final thoughts for you across the entire weekend for the NFL Divisional Round of the playoffs?
It's a 2-game slate. I always advocate against we do this together, but like it only takes one is a little more viable on these small slates, especially if one game or 2 games are low scoring. So if you see an angle that people aren't talking about, it's probably worth considering. But for me, these games are pretty straightforward, which is a little scary because it's easy to get a little obvious, but there's still ways to differentiate, overstack certain teams. Don't try to get too many shares of the teams you don't like. You can kind of justify that this week.
Yeah, for sure. I think for the 4-game slate, you get your receivers in the Saturday games. I think that's what it comes down to for me. I prefer Mechie over those guys. Maybe Coleman over Mechie. I don't know there, but like Hollywood Brown better than these dudes. Xavier Worthy better than these dudes. J-Mo better, stuff like that. So if you're playing the 4-game slate, that's get your receivers there, get everything else in the Sunday slate. At least, well, I don't know. Yeah, maybe Laporta, but that's where we settle in there. Okay, that is all that we have for today. Back with you next week, though. We're going to break down the conference championships, break down the 2-game slate for that, the final multi-game slate of the year for NFL. Sad. That'll be at 10 a.m. Eastern on the YouTube page. Go subscribe there. Turn on notifications to get notified as we go live each and every time. And also leave us a thumbs up. We appreciate those of you who have done so already. Don't forget to subscribe to the FanDuel Research Podcast. FanDuel the PGA shows on Tuesday as well. Brandon, people have questions for you on social media. Where can they find you there?
I'm on X at Gdula13, GDULA13, and on Blue Sky at Gdula.
And I'm on both X and Blue Sky at JimSannes. You can find FanDuel Research on X at FanDuel Research. Big thank you to our YouTube producer, Justin Lane, for his work on the video side of things. Thank you, Justin, as always. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. Enjoy the football this weekend. Have some fun. We'll talk to you once again next week to break down the conference championships. This has been the Heat Check, a FanDuel Research podcast.